So welcome back to the T2 Hub with me, Martin Johnson. I'm delighted today because I've got a special guest, Sir Dave Brailsford. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you very much.
Dave and I have been in a meeting all day. We've been hatching a plan and discussing all things leadership and cultures. And I thought, I cannot have you here without dragging you onto the podcast and without also recording the podcast in the form of a video. We've got some works going on outside. Ignore them. I'm sure you won't hear them, and we're going to plow through it anyway. So, Dave, first of all, welcome. We've spent the best part of 5 hours together. How have you found your day with us so far?
Yeah, great, actually. I went out for a bit of a run this morning, first time in Hull, I think, and got a bit of a sea breeze to get me going. But it was great to come here. As you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And not general podcasts where I think I can learn something. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I came across the T2 Hubcast and podcasts, and I was intrigued. I listened, and then I listened to another, and listened to another, and I think I really, really like the work that you guys are doing. So reached out, obviously, and got in touch. Because I think, in my 20 odd years of trying to survive in the sports world, you realize pretty quick that you can't actually do the thing that you're going to get judged about. I can't win a bike race. It's not me, it's somebody else. But I'm going to get judged on that other person's performance, as many of us do. So I better get pretty smart at trying to think about how do you create an environment where human beings can be the best version of themselves, perform optimally, and how do we create that, on a consistent basis? So that's kind of, if you like, what's led us here, I guess.
Has. And it was amazing, I've got to admit. Even having spent the day with you in person, we've had several virtual calls in the pandemic, as everybody does. And when I said, Dave, how did you hear about us? How was all this come about? And you said, well, I listen to your podcast when I'm on my bike. Honestly, I nearly fell off my chair. It was like somebody listens and somebody of significance. So that's really good for us because we put a lot of time and effort into authentically recording content and doing what we do. We don't have scripts like we don't today. We don't have plans. We don't. We generally sit down, table a topic, and discuss it, whether that's on video or on a podcast. So I think the authenticity and the natural style of it tends to resonate with people. And obviously, I think the first one you said you listened to that caught your eye was the organizational development and design one.
Yeah.
What's the difference? Yeah. We throw these terminologies around, and then that led to you obviously listening to the other ones. But we've had a great day today, and I think at the time of this podcast going out, would probably be safe to say that we've contracted to support you in the Ineos Grenadiers in the 2021-22 season to work with you on some leadership stuff and cultural stuff. We're absolutely thrilled and delighted. I think we have a better idea now of what that's going to look like. But I guess my question to you, Dave, is this. Obviously, you've been there, seen it, done it. You've had plenty of success. You've had plenty of ups and downs, plenty of challenges. But you're sort of still in that frame of mind where you're looking for the next thing. You're looking for how you can bring new, innovative stuff in to just help that performance, help find those gains, to use a classic saying, but anything that you can find that will help you and the team be successful. Even now, you're still looking for that, despite everything that's gone before. I mean, is that just the way you're wired, or is it the way you're brought up, or, what is that in you?
No, really, I think once you embark on a career in elite sport, you know that it's an ever-evolving kind of area to be in, and I think maybe like all of us, I see myself kind of at the analogy of I'm on a treadmill, and it's going pretty fast, and I've got to keep running if I want to stay on that treadmill. And if you decide you want to slow down a little bit, you're going to fall off the back. You're just going to get shot off the back of the treadmill, and you're gone. So either keep running very, very fast, or get off the treadmill, and keep running fast for me means that you've got to keep abreast of anything which will help you with your development of people. And, that in every sport, there's a technical aspect, there's a tactical aspect, there's there's the side of sport which is man-made, or all about tactics, etc. But fundamentally, sport is about human beings, and how they perform, how to get the best out of them, how to perform in, when you're putting yourself in a state of real, or an environment of real anxiety, and how do you manage that? So for me, it's a bit like raising kids in many respects. Your parental style with one child might be fantastic and it might get a great result. But if you use the same parental style with a second child, it might have a totally different outcome. So you've got to adapt. And of course, parenting over time changes. You're not parenting the same way as you are with a 2-year-old as you are with a 20-year-old. And it's the same in our business, same in our game. And you've got to keep constantly be willing to keep abreast of new developments, latest developments. And it seems like anything else, it goes through, ebbs and flows. It goes through ups and downs. And you can find, certainly culturally, a time when things come together. You've got a good cultural dynamic. You've got a strong culture, strong cultural leadership. People understand what the culture is and they buy into it. And of course, over time, then they thrive in that culture and they perform. And then that comes to an end. There's a life cycle to it. And you've got to build another one.
And you've got to start again.
And
I guess
that's what we're doing.
One of the things we're finding at the minute, working with organisations from all industries and different backgrounds, is this generational shift as well. And I don't know if you're seeing this in sport, but, you've probably, I'm not going to make you feel old, Dave, but you've probably coached sports people now of possibly 3 generations, maybe 4 generations, definitely 3 generations. Do you see a shift in the mindset? Because, we've had Generation X, now we've had millennials, now we're experiencing Generation Z come through, the young, late teens, early 20s people, and they've been brought up in different environments with different parenting styles, with the digital industrial revolution, certainly the last 10, 15 years. Are you seeing that manifest different in the way you've got to deal with those sports people depending on generational shift? Is that certainly happening, or is it still completely, in your opinion, just down to the individual?
No, I think you've got to adapt, and if you listen and watch, all the different generations you've just described, it's hard not to hear about that. So we're all going to be aware of that, and if you look a little bit, then you're going to find out some of the attributes of those generations, how best to approach them, and what might give you a greater chance of success. And I've coached through an era where there was very little mobile phone use, and all of a sudden, everything, social, mobiles, the way people interact, the influence that social media and the internet has on people and their behaviours has changed massively. But you've got to engage with it. I think that's the thing. Knowledge in itself isn't enough. So being aware of something as a leader is not enough. You've got to take that knowledge, you've got to learn about it. And you think, well, how am I going to translate this into something which is meaningful? And in the end, as most things, knowledge is important, but it's the application of that knowledge and the final kind of executable step, if you like, the really little things that make a difference in the end to somebody, which is where the real kind of the real challenge lies. And you only need, can have the whole chain in place of knowledge and great delivery to start with, but all you need is one loose link in that chain, to use a cycling analogy, and it all falls down. And I think that's what we see. And it's very difficult to apply science. It's the application of science. It's the application of psychology. It's the application of leadership knowledge. It's the application of education, which in the end brings you the results. And that's about effort, I think.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to do.
We spoke about it today, Dave, and I was drawing on the whiteboard to you and talking about this chasm at the minute between driving accountability and performance. And if you think back 2 generations and sort of through the 80s and 90s in elite sport and in overall performance, it was very much a driving performance and accountability and very much at times autocratic and directive as a general rule. And then we fast forward through a generation or so to today, and it's very much, the world has changed, and leadership styles have changed, and the way people receive communication has changed, and obviously we want to be compassionate and empathetic and cater for human beings as well, right? But there is a chasm, and we talked about it today, between, do great leaders find that balance between driving accountability and results, and being very clear on non-negotiables and expectations, and engaging people and being compassionate and empathetic. Is that the way forward, do you find? If you're too stacked in one direction, if you're too empathetic and about rapport and you become more of a friend, and if you're too driven by big stick and results and output, you become a little bit of a dictator and a bit autocratic. Does the balance lie in a leader's ability now, even in a sporting context, to try and balance the two? What do you think?
Well, I think in any situation, I think you're right, absolutely, 100% right. And nothing's static. So I don't think we stay in the same consistent, level of requirements from a leadership point of view. Things are changing all the time, and you have to read it, and you have to make the effort to read it. And I think then you try and adapt your own style. And if you as a leader having a difficult moment, or it's an intense period, because we're all the same. We all have moments where it's going well and all moments where it's not going so well. And how you're responding in those situations will determine your impact as a leader on others. And so when things aren't going well, you need to have probably the opposite response to what you're feeling in order to support other people in that same environment. And that's not easy. And sometimes I think we do it well, and sometimes we don't do it so well. But I think in general, being able to stop and reflect and think about what impact am I having on this group? Have I got insight into managing myself? Am I managing my own behavior? Am I managing, how my level of support or intensity, whatever else it may be? I think that's fundamental as a first step. It's the look in the mirror analogy, isn't it? To manage other people.
I'm laughing because what's really struck me today, Dave, having spent the day with you, is this. Obviously, the more success you have and the more longevity you have in an arena or in a sporting context, the more people sort of remember the successes and, hail the genius and all the rest of it. However, you spent the entire day talking to me today about all the times you got it wrong and being quite open and almost like, and I said this and then I had to check myself, and then what I really got wrong. And when I think back to those days when I was doing this, and I was quite struck by that. But I think it's sort of saying that no matter what success you get, it's like you've got this constant mirror up going, but what did I get wrong?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that? I mean, I'm saying that that's the case, but is that generally the case with you?
I think so. I think you've got some sort of non-negotiables for yourself. If you want people to achieve the best or be the best that they can be, then you have to, create a bit of ambition around the place and bring a bit of energy and make sure there's an enthusiasm backed up by a good plan. This is how I can actually break it down and achieve that. And but self-reflection is pretty important. And I think if you want to be the best you can be, then you're gonna have to try things that you may not have tried before, and you've got to push. You've got to push. You can't just we're not talking about sort of sitting in a comfort zone and being mediocre. We're talking about trying to be the best you can be. And you can't be the best you can be without really pushing to the limit. When you push to the limit, sometimes it's going to work really well, and at other times it's not going to work so well. But as long as you can get insight, or I've got people around and catch that pretty quick and self-correct. And I think, over the years, been very lucky to work with various people and who've got a very keen, good, Steve Peters in psychiatry, obviously. I listen to a lot of things. And that's why I'm engaged with you guys, because it causes you to self-reflect. There's no getting away from the fact that you have to look at yourself in a mirror constantly and engage with that. And the moment you stop and you take it for granted, then you're in trouble, I think.
Yeah, and I think that manifests in you, because you were saying today that, let's say, for example, you win X amount of gold medals at the Olympics, or you win the Tour de France. You were saying today about in you're very quickly to put that to bed. It's not, I'm not dining out on that. I'm going to put that to bed, and it's like, right, next season, I need to win. Whereas the temptation for a lot of humans would be go, I've won the Tour de France. That's me made, right? I can dine out on that for at least 10 years. But you were saying about this constant not celebrating it for too long, putting it to bed, right, moving on, what next? And I guess that then fuels this never-ending cycle of going, well, looking for more. How do we be better? What can we bring in? What we're not doing so well. So I think that's just probably a trait in you, isn't it? That, I mean, do you ever allow yourself just to sit there and go, yeah, that was good? Or does it, no?
I wish I could, actually. I really do. I would like to down out on it. But it's just not how I'm wired. I think it feels to me that there was a couple of things, really. I think if you lead a team of young people wanting to be the best that they can be, then you've got some serious responsibility there. It's not about me; it's about them, and I'm here to enable their performance and support their performance, their careers. And if you're going to take that burden of responsibility on board, then you've got to take it seriously, I think. And you have a duty of care, really, to be the best you can be. How can you expect, it just doesn't stack up to me we used to talk about podium people, where if you want a performer to get on an Olympic podium or be on top of the podium, then why would we accept that everybody else around in supporting that individual wouldn't be striving to be on the podium themselves? So if I'm going to be a team principal or a performance director, who's the best performance director or a team principal in the world? And if they're on the podium, what are the attributes that's putting them there? How do I stack up against that? And how am I going to strive to get there? I think it's just a given. And I think the other thing for me, unfortunately, is that every time I go to a race, it's as if I had my chips and a collection of chips, as it were. And every time I go to a race, I just put the whole lot on red or black, roll the dice, and it's all on the line as far as I'm concerned. And that's just my mentality. And I think that drives me on.
It's almost that mantra of there is no middle ground. You win or you lose. We're massive on that at the minute when we're working in education and with younger generations around. It's not this taking part, notion. There is always winners and losers in life in any endeavor. And I remember watching something, I don't know if it was an interview or a documentary with you, where at the end you was asked the question around, is driving a really high performing environment worth all of it? And it was like, well, we're here to raise a nation of winners, not a nation of losers. And I think, yes, generational shifts are meaning we have to do that in a slightly different way, and that we have to be more informed about communication styles and behaviors and empathy and compassion and all the rest of it. However, ultimately, it's about winning. And in a sporting context, there's no other way, is there?
No, and that's what we set out to do. We set out to win the biggest races in the world, and we get judged on it. That's how people will judge us. I would caveat that and say, in the end, we can only be the best that we can be, and striving to get personal excellence and achieve the best that we can possibly be. And if that's the best in the world, great. But if it's, I don't know, 100th in the world, if it's the best that you can be, and you're achieving personal excellence, then that's where you're at. So we're in the business. We're as the team that we are, trying to achieve the trying to race in the biggest races in the world and setting out to win them. Then absolutely, we're there to perform and win those races. But I think we should also bear in mind that you can win without winning at times. It sounds a bit ridiculous, but and it's not contradictory, I hope. But personal excellence is what we're all striving for in the end, isn't it? The best version of ourselves, the best we can be, and we can support one another to achieve that.
So I've got one last question before we finish, just on a little bit around our work together going forward. I've got enough time, haven't we? We've got enough time. So I've worked in sport before, as you know, albeit only once or twice in a T2 capacity, and nowhere near the level that you've operated at. But it seems to me very much like we talked about the elite sports equation today, and I put talent right at the center of it. We work in many different sectors, and having the right talent and the right personnel within a team seems to me in sport more important factor than any other industry that I've worked in. Cultures, leadership, everything, technology, innovation, support, everything is an ingredient of success. But it seems to me in certain sporting environments that if you just have the best players, the best talent, the freak, once in a generation sports person, does any of the other things matter? Can you still win purely just with the right talent, or do you think it's much deeper and more than that? Because
I think talent alone it's if you like, you need the talent to win, but there's potentially more talent out there who aren't getting the opportunity to fully flourish and demonstrate their talent because of all of the factors around them, really. So that might be environment, that might be leadership, it might be belief, it might be all the other components of sport now that exist in all the ologies around sport. But I really do think people, talent is important, but we're in the business of enabling people to really, really get the very, very best out of talent. And you've got to believe in that. If we don't believe in other people, why are they going to believe in themselves? And when we started out many moons ago, when I first started out with the British cycling program, we had 1 gold medal in 76 years of trying, and we went from there a very short period of time to winning a lot. And why did that happen? People didn't believe it was going to happen, but actually slowly but surely we had the talent. We enabled a sort of a human program. Really, it was a people program that we tried to bring into the fore at the velodrome, and then apply that to cycling, as it were. And lo and behold, they were champions everywhere. And I'm not sure we'd have recognised them, everybody, as champions before they went out. So for me, talent's massively important. You're always going to get the talent of a generation, that's for sure. It's going to happen, be that in football and cycling, whichever sport. However, I think in the right environment, with the right support, the right encouragement, the right plan, the right tools, the right means to manage their barriers and challenges and overcome all of that, the right ambition, the right hunger, then there are a lot more champions out there than probably think.
Awesome. Last question. 6 to 9 months from now, we've conducted some of the work that we're going to do together. We work with leaders in your organization. We drive a successful program. If there was one leadership outcome improvement within the environment that you'd like to try and achieve, what would that be? What does it look like?
Well, I like the idea of, I think now in today's kind of world, as it were, integrated performance, or performance through integration of all the different kind of elements that go into it, the people around and provide services, etc., is fundamental. And getting people to integrate and collaborate, as we all know, isn't easy. We can get people into structures, we can get people into departments, but it's the bit between the boxes and the organogram that really matter. And I think one thing that we would really like to look back on in 6 to 8 months' time, look back and go, wow, we are really a collaborative organisation. And I think if we can achieve that, then the rest will look after itself.
It's like we've got all the pieces.
Exactly.
We've got all the different facets. It's about bringing it together.
Exactly.
And
in
making
the right
it work as
environment,
one.
the right mindset, with good leadership, the right talent, which I'm sure we got. But I think collaboration and integration, performance integration, they'd be the two. I know you asked me for one, but there's two there, hand in hand, really. And I think they'd be the two things that I think would be top of the list.
Perfect. And if we've got a couple of minutes, have we got a couple of minutes? Just looking over at Dylan, who's overseeing the proceedings today. I'm putting you on the spot here, Dave, but I guess if you was, because I'm going to turn the events around here. If you was to ask me one question on anything, what would you ask me on this podcast?
I think rather than asking about where we're heading, it was where you got your drive, and I think you've got a very structured mind. And I think when you impart knowledge, you do it in a very clear, concise way, and which is what attracted me to you guys in the first place. Where did that come from, really? Where did that come about?
Yeah, it's my drive, I think, partly is from my upbringing, and also wanting to have better than what I had, I think, as a working class person from Hull. So I always had an initial drive to succeed. But I guess in this particular area of developing others and people and leadership and consulting, there was a great mentor of mine in the military called Wayne O'Kell MBE. He got an MBE for services in the military, and he was my rugby coach at the time. And I was quite an outspoken person. I was quite larger than life, and it wasn't always serving me well, Dave. I've got to admit, right? And everybody used to try and cut me down and say, "You need to back off. You need to stop being so outspoken. You need to stop being this." And this particular person said something different to me, and I'll always remember it. And I quote him in my book. He said, "Never change what you have, that aura, that presence, that strength. However, you need to learn to harness it in the right direction. If you can learn to sort of channel and harness it, you will be capable of incredible things." And that was the moment. I always remember as early 20s, that was the defining moment where I was like, yeah, he's right, and I could do this. So then I started reading books. I started going on courses. I started to develop myself, and that unlocked a whole different mindset for me. And that's where I started to harness and channel what I had into work, career, consulting, etc. And the rest is history. So I think the drive was in me from childhood and wanting to do well in life. But I think the defining changing moment for me was when the first person ever said to me, "Don't change. I'm not going to clip your wings, but you definitely need to learn to make it serve you well and stop getting you in the shit all the time." And I just remembered that as a piece of coaching to me that was incredibly empowering and liberating. And I thought, if I can do that for other people, wouldn't that be something?
Brilliant.
That's sort of where it comes from. Right then. We're going to end it there, Dave, because we're almost at time. But thank you for your time today. I am looking forward to working with you and the Grenadiers and Ineos. Let's see where it goes. Thank you for being part of the podcast. We'll wrap that up there, and we'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast and T2 video.